Yes, good morning, colleagues. I first of all, I would want to express my pleasure to be with you today and to be able to participate in this very useful conference. And of course, I'm very sorry that the format is online, but that unfortunately are the circumstances of our years of our recent age. But nevertheless, I do hope that we could manage to have a useful exchange. So my presentation, my talk would be focused on very particular developments in the Republic of North Macedonia after 2006. It will deal mainly with years from 2006 to 2017, when we have a very consolidated one-party rule regime in that country. But nevertheless, I think that some of the features of my presentation are concerned all the post-communist history of that country, and could be material for certain conclusions to some other countries as well, I suppose. So I try to also to have a presentation. I hope you see something on it or not. Do we have some presentation on the screen or not?
We have.
Okay, good. So in fact, when we analyze the development of Republic of Macedonia, or Republic of North Macedonia, as the country was named after the conclusion of Prespa Agreement and its implementation in 2019, it is widely acknowledged that we have deep hypertrophy of party functions. In fact, we have a kind of quite exaggerated functions of the political parties, and the term partization could be named, could be coined, that in fact political parties permit and determine the working of society at large, and leads, among others, to serious infringement on the basic principles of democracy. There are different aspects of this phenomena in the country. Of course, the most easy to discern is the control and full domination, in fact, over the public administration. On assuming power, the government parties not only designate key governing political figures, as is normal in democracies, but they nominate the expert staff in the public administration that is supposed to be non-party and expert and neutral, both in the ministries and agencies headquarters in Skopje and in branches throughout the country. In the context of high unemployment, even the service personnel of every department of and also of state-owned enterprises was scrutinized and determined by the respective branch of the ruling parties. Also, it should be noted that parties impose their control over the institutions that are independent by law. They use different techniques to eject a lion and impose their own party agents and executive in the justice system. And just as an example, when a new system of so-called lustration law was enacted in Republic of Macedonia, the first that was affected by that was the president of the Constitutional Court. So obviously he was a person that was either neutral or connected with other political parties, and it was obvious that this served as an instrument for gaining control over that important body of the justice system. Of course, political parties, and especially the governing one, tend and in fact made a great drive to establish total control not only of the central but also of the local government. In fact, after the 2013 local elections, only 5 municipalities remained outside of the control of the then ruling VMRO-DPMNE party. So, in fact, this phenomena is also was also characteristic of the Western Albanian-dominated part of the country, where the partner, the Albanian partner, DUI party, actually won all municipalities, with the exception only of the town of Struga. So, in fact, only 6 out of the 80 municipalities were not controlled by the government. And this interest is not very much in the power of the local government itself, but interest and control over the potential of municipalities to generate control, not only using the jobs in the municipal services, but also through command over local private sector with the help of the carrot of municipal tenders and the stick of different permits, inspections, and controls. Of course, this leads us to the dependence of the small and mid-sized economic entities at the end of the day of the party in power, because with different instruments of the central and local government, all mid-sized and small businesses are forced somehow to make their minds how to proceed in society. Of course, pressure is exerted not only on the small and mid-scale, but also on the big business companies. Many examples could be shown in that effect, but because of the lack of time, I have no opportunity. But for example, the numerous data that was aired in 2015 by the then opposition demonstrated that certain big groups, like that of the big new oligarch Naoum Kaytchev, was created during that regime. And this new oligarch, who is in very close relations with the prime minister and his first cousin, actually became one of the most rich men in the country. And the other instrument was not creation of the old oligarch, but cooperation, creation of the new oligarch, but cooperation with the older ones. And this leads us, of course, to the projection of the might of the party and of the partization, also to the NGO sector that is supposed to be independent. In fact, there are a number of local NGOs that obviously are extension of the governing, at that time, VMRO-DPMNE party. We had a kind of very strange NGO civic movement for defense of Macedonia that carried a number of counter-protests and demonstrations aimed against the main opposition, Social Democratic Party, and the so-called colorful revolution against the regime. Obviously, it was a movement organized by the VMRO-DPMNE ruling party, but officially it was executed by a kind of NGO. And the examples of NGOs being instrument of the specific government policy, including in the policy of antiquization and of raising new monuments, could be cited in detail. And finally, the partization of the public and political life in the Republic of Macedonia was additionally reinforced with the help of the media. Not only the public broadcaster, Macedonian Radio Television, covered events in clearly pro-government perspective, but the most influential private TVs with high ratings were owned by the either by coalition partners of the ruling party or by personalities who aggressively supported the government. And some of the media were owned by such big business companies that obviously were in close cooperation with VMRO-DPMNE. The result of this partization is fragmentation of state institution and society at large along party lines that has nothing to do with the principles of democratic functioning and in the long term undermine the healthiness of the democracy in Republic of North Macedonia. Within the state structures, the main counterbalance, the main opposition to this very dangerous fragmentation process of partization, in fact, came from the so-called deep state, with the main center, the security services. Those institutions, for well-known reasons, are not that well researched still, but still there is a plethora of evidence for their working within the Republic of Macedonia after its independence in 1991. In fact, their key role is concerned with the involvement in the construction of the Republic's political party system in 1990-1991. In fact, all major parties, including the main opposition at the time, VMRO-DPMNE, were either created or controlled or heavily influenced by the state security service. This is widely known in the Republic, but very rarely commented publicly. In his memoirs, the first speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Macedonia in 1990, Stoyanandov, wrote extensively on the involvement of the then Minister of Interior, Ljubomir Frčkovski, in internal working of different parties at the time. And he outlined, I'm quoting now, "We at the time had no minimal democratic conditions to prevent such developments because collaborators of the Secret Service were infiltrated within the parties and in all state institutions. And meanwhile, the majority of the people still were susceptible to the anti-Bulgarian propaganda in Macedonia that has been conducted as a state policy until 1991. In fact, the state secret service functioned as the only institution that to the great extent is, to a certain extent, is above the political parties and the major force that counters the fragmentation imposed by the parties. So it is a very complex and very ambiguous relation between those security services and political parties as an institution. The apogee of this fragmentation and centralization on the other part by security service was the rule of VMRO DPMNE under Nicola Gruevski from 2006 to 2017, when that party managed to establish monopoly over political power at nearly all levels. However, the centralization brought about by the secret services was precisely the opposite to the principles of democracy. The main aspects of the working of the security services, especially in those years of the Gruevski regime, were in fact outlined in a special report which was commissioned by the European Commission in 2015 after the outbreak of the political crisis in that country. So this was a report of the experts which were led by the leading civil servant within the European Commission, Reinhard Priebe. And in this report of May 2015, that report dwelt extensively on the functioning of the security service, main security service in the Republic of Macedonia. So this report outlined concentration of power within the main national security service. This is Uprava za bezbednost I kontrol, Directorate for Security and Control, as was named back then that service. So, in fact, that report stated that the service has malfunctioning, has no mechanism of oversight over that service. That service has an operation outside its legal mandate. In fact, it controlled top officials in the current public administration. That means the administration of the current government. So it serves as a kind of internal control of the personalities at the top, the prime minister, the head of the service of the security service. And in fact, the head of the security service, Sasho Miałkov, was the first cousin, the personal relative of the prime minister at that time, Nicola Gruevski. So we have also kind of family at the head of the state, not only party, but also a kind of family rule. So in fact, they controlled not only personalities in the public administration, but also prosecutors, judges, and political opponents. Also, the Priebe report demonstrated and established monopoly over the use of tools of surveillance and interceptions. That means that the police, the common police, the custom administration, and financial police are in fact dependent on the surveillance and interception that is accomplished only by that service. Also, that report established that UBK has the means to interfere in criminal investigations and indirectly to undermine the independence of the leader of that investigation. And of course, that report also stated how in detail this interception was accomplished. In fact, the telecommunication providers actually provided the service with all apparatus and possibilities to intercept telephone communications. So the report also, of course, stated certain recommendation, and due to the lack of time, it's not possible to list all of them. But what is most important is that after the change of the government in 2017, some of these recommendations were analyzed and taken by the new government. And after 2 years, in 2019, this counterintelligence agency was dissolved, and a new service called Agency of National Security was established on the 1st September of 2019. And obviously, those challenges in front of the development of the Republic of Macedonia are still in place. Of course, there is a difference with the situation before 2017, but still the all important influence of political parties and very sensible role of the security service remains a kind of challenge to the future development of that country. So thank you very much for your attention, colleagues.